Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good evening. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee. I'll be with you for the next hour here on Radio Hambra. I know I'm a psychologist, but recent shows have been very much focused on what's happening in Iran because it's so much what's on people's minds these days. Definitely not an expert on really anything, but definitely not geopolitical affairs, but still feel the need to at least talk about it, even if I'm not going to tell you exactly what's going on. I'm not a journalist, nor can I predict what is going to happen, but I do like to share insights from my perspective of what I'm seeing, my own opinion on some things, and what's happening. Depending on when you even listen to the show, things might be changing day to day. We hear different things going on, but what I think is clear is that the Iranian people, 90 million individuals, have been going through far too much for far too long. 47 years of this regime, which has been horrible for the people, and that's why the majority of the people don't want them in power, but the people in power can cling to their power and use lots of means, which are all at their disposal to do so, which is what they've been doing, no matter how ugly those means have been throughout these decades, but also in these recent months. And so they've dealt with that and tried to fight alone against this regime. And then it seemed like maybe there was help on the way. What does that help? What could help? What looks like help is not clear or easy to know, but it seemed that help might be on the way. But, and I don't know if I can say but yet, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but this is really, really hard to see what's happening here with the attacks that I know people still have hopes it's a rescue mission. And again, it's so hard to see in the fog of war and while things are happening, what's going to happen. But yeah, there's been a lot of unfortunate, very, very sad things that have been happening or that we see happening in Iran with the war. And at least outwardly, what you hear from President Trump, you don't get such a strong sense that the people are at the forefront of everything that is going on, or liberating the people of Iran is at least the outward goal. So I don't know. It's very sad to see what the people of Iran are enduring, and the people in power don't generally care for anything other than keeping their power. And I think that's what we're seeing. So, my hope always was for the people of Iran and for freedom and peace, both for the people of Iran. So freedom from this regime and having freedom and all the rights, and then also peace. So now they're experiencing war and bombardment, and they deserve to be free of both of those things, have that freedom, and also to have peace. And that for me is clear. Now, how that happens, I can't say I know. And so from always, but also these last few months, I've always tried to put that forward, one, because that's the truth. And two, I hope to add that to the conversation, not my opinion of I don't know, but the idea that we can talk about these things with an accurate level of humility, which is that we can't say we know exactly what should happen, how things will play out, what's the exact right path for things to happen here. Things are very, very complicated and unclear, and you can't predict things. But, with political things in general, and it's gotten worse over the years, something I discussed on the show many times, with social media amplifying polarization, we're just seeing everyone's so extreme, everyone's so certain about how they talk about things, everyone's so ready to attack one another for being wrong, for being stupid, for being a traitor, for being whatever it is. We're just seeing so much of that, which is really, really unfortunate. So I've always wanted for the people of Iran to be free, but I don't know how that could happen, or how that would happen, or would come about. And it's just been sad to see again what's been going on from the protests and thousands of innocent people being killed and people having to deal with that. And then now again with the war and no clarity of what the end will be or when the end will be, and also what will be the objectives in that end or what will happen for the people of Iran. So it's just been very, very sad um, to see all of that. And so talking to those of us talking about it when we're, posting and communicating with one another, I think, things get pretty ugly pretty quick. And I'll share some of my own experience, not to amplify or talk about how hard it is, what I've experienced, because it definitely is not, but just it gives me a glimpse into what is going on out there amongst people. You can post something, and every so often I post something on my Instagram page. I'm not so active on social media, but I try to post at least every few days at minimum, and always trying to share the stories of the people of Iran, amplify the voices of the people of Iran. Just not one voice, but to share as much as possible what is out there, and also giving some insights here and there. But I haven't done a lot of that. But what I've experienced is even when I've shared a little bit more of an opinion, or even sometimes not even much of an opinion, when you post something, it's just so interesting the responses that you can get. And that's something I wanted to also talk about today, was just the ways that I think people, based on their reactions, we could see the ways that we think about things in general. We think about these kinds of things, and often what I think are pitfalls or mistakes in our thinking, or ways that we think about things that lead us to not really see things as clearly as we can, and also to be able to communicate with one another without it becoming very ugly very quick. To begin with, it's interesting because I've posted things, and from the same post, gotten responses attacking me in either side, saying that I'm anti-war, and other people saying I'm pro-regime within the same post, or same kind of a story, which is almost, I don't want to say funny, in a way funny, but I mean, it just shows, I think, how extreme people are, that if you don't say things exactly a certain way, or exactly the way that they see it, or a certain team sees it or says it, then you must be from the other side. There's no space for nuance, for uncertainty, for a deviation from a way of saying things. It's kind of one way or the other. Either it's us or them, good or bad, right, wrong, good versus evil, all of those things. And I just think that's not the case. I think people would do much better if they could recognize that there isn't some kind of clarity. So yeah, I've seen that and I've heard this from other people too, that on the same post you can get attacked for being both pro-war or anti or pro-regime, which tend to be against each other, but people can see a lot because they extrapolate a lot from what you say. Communication through social media, it's hard to be so complete, especially, let's say, if I'm writing something, or if you write something, even if you say something, to be so comprehensive to get every point across, or every point of what you think. It is really not possible. Then people will attack you for not clearly you mean this if you also said this. What I also have seen a lot is people assuming that if you were supporting the people of Iran, and even if you went to protests or you did certain things, you must be pro-war, which I don't think has to be the case. The thing is, when you go to a protest, there usually is some central theme, but not everyone who's at that protest agrees about everything. They might have some really different views, but they've come together in some way. And generally, a lot of protests were in support of the people of Iran, to make sure, their voices are heard. When you go to a protest and there's, 300,000 people there, it makes the news, and then it makes people pay attention and not lose sight and know that lots of people care about this issue, and that can have an impact. And so I think I and a lot of other people go to protests for that reason. Even when this would happen, it was earlier on just in protests of what the Iranian government was doing to the people of Iran. And you know, things. That movement, I would say, especially the diaspora, became much more about intervention, or you would hear that a lot. Again, it was not everyone, but there was some sense, as there were voices in Iran asking for help, even specifically saying they need, asking Trump for help, asking America for help, essentially. But again, I'm sure that's not everyone in Iran. That's just some people and some voices that we saw. Um, that did become what many people were saying. And so what I also see is people just moving so quickly to judgments about something happening. So the attack started on Iran and a lot happened really quick. Khamenei was killed and many other top Iranian officials were killed, and people were celebrating like, you know, this is victory, everything is done, liberation, the Iranian people have been rescued. And I felt like it's way too soon. This could be. I mean, I have hope in the sense that I was hopeful for the people of Iran always, that good will come for them. But there was such a quick, swift judgment that, we kind of know already the result, or it's over. Of course, someone so prominent, the supreme leader, literally being killed, obviously is a big step or big sign, and is also symbolic on top of him actually having power and ruling in a horrible way. It obviously is very symbolic, and it feels like, okay, well, if the top, you cut off the head of the snake, that's it. But that it wasn't it, and there was so much more that the people of Iran were going to have to endure. It seemed likely that it wasn't just going to end in a day. So that's also something that I'm seeing a lot of, is just prematurely, and it relates to this idea of certainty, that people are just jumping to conclusions. Okay, this was definitely good. This is what's happening, or this is what's happened, or it's already done, or whatever it might be, when, we don't know. I mean, I'm not saying don't have any reaction. You are going to have a reaction, but recognize that even though you feel a reaction to something, just to know that's a feeling, it doesn't mean it's some kind of statement about what is definitely going to happen. So you have a lot of anger or hatred towards Khamenei for what he's done over decades to the people of Iran, maybe even to your own friends or family. So understandably, you're going to have a strong reaction when you hear of his death. But does that necessarily mean all the bad is gone, or all the bad things won't happen anymore? It's obviously too soon to say, or to know. So we have lots of feelings that people don't like to think about this. They think, no, it's just because this is what's happening, or that's what's on. You have a feeling, you hear about something, you hear some news, you hear some reports. Understandably, you have feelings or thoughts, but this is also amplified by social media, like, hot takes and being the first to report and being so certain and trying to get attention. But people just react or respond in certain ways, or post videos dancing and celebration, when, let's kind of wait a bit. I think things move way too fast, or, media and social media move so fast that we are just celebrating and making decisions before we really know what's going on. So there's intense feelings. We care a lot. We want to see certain things happen, and when we see something change, it's understandable. We get very hopeful, but I think it's important to pause a bit and not assume a certain result. Another thing is, people will assume a lot based on what you say. As I was saying before, this is something I'm just noticing so much, that if you say, for example, look what the regime is doing to the people of Iran at this time. If you said it maybe 2 months ago, it'd be different. But now it could sound like people kind of, they think they're reading between the lines, rather than just saying, okay, something the regime is doing is bad, but they can make that leap to then think you're pro-war. So if you're against what the regime is doing, you must be pro-war, where you can be against what the regime is doing, but also against war, or have mixed feelings about the war attack, or, whatever it might be. Something I'll talk about a bit more after the break is the black and white thinking that I've mentioned several times before, but I also wanted to discuss again because I'm seeing so much of it. But so people will assume, okay, it seems like that's how I would see it. It's like, okay, if you're posting something against the regime, that must be your way of saying that you are pro any attack on Iran, because you're saying the regime is so bad. Or if you only post that, but you haven't posted something about how bad the war is, and you must think only that is bad. I've seen a lot of messages. I got a lot of messages like that, and I've seen a lot of people who get messages like that. And that's what I mean, is that when you post one thing, it's hard to be comprehensive about everything you feel about the situation and issue, and everything you think is wrong about what is going on. So you hear about someone being executed in Iran, and you might post that because it's really horrible that a young man or woman is being executed for peacefully protesting. That doesn't mean you're in support or against the war either way. It's just you could be saying that is something wrong. And within that post, someone can't write everything they think about the whole situation and issue and everything else they think is wrong. So you can't say, this is wrong, but I also think X, Y, and Z is wrong, and this is wrong. It's just you're sharing something. But people are just very quick to react and respond to certain things or assume based on one post they know your whole position. But you don't. If someone posts something, you can just take that at its face value. Now, I know sometimes you want to read between the lines because people try to do things and twist certain things or create a narrative. I understand. So I'm not saying you can't pay attention to that at all, but sometimes we can be very quick to assume we know everything about someone or someone's position because of one thing, or assume that if they haven't said everything or said more things, this is what they think. It's, they're against one side or the other. So I want to continue on some of these themes because I'm seeing how there's, I would say communication, really lack of communication, really bad communication amongst us. And we could do much better. So let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The first segment I was talking about some of the ways of thinking and not maybe quite, I would say, clearly thinking about what's happening in Iran and especially how we communicate to one another about what's happening in Iran. And I was saying some things about assumptions we make or different ways of thinking that we might do, black and white thinking, which I'll talk about further. Something, for example, I've seen a lot of people assuming they know your position, which I talked about. And even for me, I've gotten many messages about begging for this war or wanting this war. And it makes me question, and I never felt that I was. I could understand people that thought maybe the war could even help. I think always I try to look at both sides. And with what was going on, I could see that people in Iran wanted help, and they really felt that they could not withstand this regime, which was butchering them and being horrific and murdering its own people. But I also felt that help from the U.S. or other nations wouldn't come without strings attached or wouldn't be so clean and easy. So I didn't know if that would help because I didn't, I just think no one knew for sure. You can have an opinion or thoughts about it. So I really didn't know what would be the best. I just wanted what was best for the people of Iran. But I was always cautious. I'm not someone who likes war, and I don't think war is the way to get to peace. There could be rare instances where war can protect someone because of a very imminent danger or a certain type of threat, but it's definitely for me not a first line. So I never, I always had to go back and look at my posts, and because I got so many messages like that. I think it's assumptions because of things other people may say or hear, but nonetheless, there was a lot of those kinds of messages. So again, these assumptions that are based on certain maybe certain clues, or you hear something from someone else, or you hear someone has this position, you assume someone close to them might have a similar opinion. It's just kind of interesting to hear the messages that people share, which also shows they don't really want to understand where you're coming from, because if they did, for example, I have so many shows where I'm talking about what is going on, in my opinion, about what's going on, and you could hear my opinion or where I'm at. Of course, it changes over time, something I'll talk about, or can change with new information or new perspectives. But it's been interesting for me hearing so many people tell me what I think about something that's different from what I think or what I wanted. And I've heard this also from many people, that they just get these assumptions. As I said, you can make the same post and be attacked from two different sides for, people saying you want opposite things, or you want, you're pro this or you're pro that, even if you're not. So it's just interesting. And, what's also unfortunate, I should say, is I think we need to keep talking, keep posting and, sharing and making sure we share it with one another, but also that the word gets out there and people don't forget about what's happening in Iran, because as I was saying, news cycles and media cycles, they move so fast now. That often, if something gets boring or people stop caring because it doesn't seem as interesting, then the attention moves away from it. And that would be really heartbreaking because, again, the most important people here are the people of Iran who can never be and should never be forgotten. But what happens when we have such hateful conversations and discourse or lack of real discourse is that people will stop talking. I even felt it that I put some posts yesterday. I thought what Trump said, his tweet or his Truth Social post, whatever it was totally unacceptable and not something that a president should put in, not just because of the language, but because of the office of the presidency and then what's happening now. Again, and then I got messages from people saying, obviously, this is a play or he's tricking them or whatever, and I can't get into that. But nonetheless, I put a few posts. And again, my main theme was having empathy and caring for the people of Iran who have had to endure this horrible regime and then also now be subjected to this war. That, yeah, we don't know where it's going to go, but it's been horrible for many people already for this, I don't know, 5 weeks or so. So that's, was my main message in posting some related things about some of, the regime and how bad they've been, and also Trump. And I think some of the things he's saying that are not good. And I think he often just focuses on one way, which is aggression and kind of bullying, but that tactic is not always going to work. You can't be at one speed. I could be wrong about all this. Let's, you can fast forward a short period of time or a long period of time, and he was a mastermind behind it all. I don't feel that way so far, but anyway, that's its own kind of thing. Nonetheless, but there's a sense that people, as I was saying, kind of already know what's right and what's wrong, and unfortunately, what it will do is that people will stop talking, because as I posted this and I got lots of messages, some were neutral, some were even positive, but lots of negative things that, as I said, were interesting attacks because they were both in all different directions. I did have this feeling of like, it makes me feel less likely to want to post something. And I kind of know this is par for the course. And there's people that are much more vocal on social media and have much bigger following. So they must be getting this much more strongly, these types of reactions and messages, and maybe even, I'm sure, way more hateful and way more of them and all of that. But if anything, I was like, this is going to make it less likely for me and for others to post. So, I think with everything we do, we should think about our intentions. And when you think about social media, I always say we should think about, why am I posting this, whether it's a story or post or whatever it is. Why am I doing this? What's my intention here? Am I sharing something with other people, let's say, about my life? If it's like other things we post, is it I want to share information? Am I virtue signaling? Am I trying to show what side I'm on? All sorts of things. But if we really think about things and ask ourselves what we're doing and why we're doing it, we can get a better sense of, okay, what am I doing here? So when you post something, think about that. And then also when you reply to someone, whether it's in the comments, whether it's a direct message or reply to a story, whatever it is, ask yourself, what's your intention? So someone posts something, you might have a feeling. I mean, I can understand you have a feeling, you want to express that feeling, but expressing it to that person, yes, they made you upset, or their post made you upset, or their way of thinking makes you upset, or the way you think they think, or whatever it is makes you upset. But I do think it's important to reflect, what's my goal here? Is it just to get angry with them? Okay, you can do that. Is it to hopefully change their mind if you think they're wrong? Probably just attacking them is not going to do that, especially if it's hateful, but probably not going to do that. Is my goal for the people of Iran, whatever it is ultimately? Well, what's the best for them? And usually that's going to be something that promotes unity and keeps people together rather than something that is attacking. And by the way, I also had people that respectfully disagree, and I can get that. That's fine. So I think they misrepresented what I was saying, but nonetheless, there was just I think that's very good. We definitely, I'm not saying don't disagree, but we should do it with respect for yourself and the other person, and to bridge a gap or create communication and discourse rather than attacking. So I should make that point clear, that disagreement is necessary for any kind of discourse, for us to improve our ideas and to get to a better place. But it's the nasty, hateful kind of disagreement that I think we don't need and is not beneficial. So ask yourself, why am I writing this message? Why am I saying this? Sometimes it's just to get angry or hate. Sometimes we're projecting our own uncertainty is something I see a lot, that we're not sure. So someone posts something, and because we're not sure, we attack them because there's uncertainty within us. Sometimes we don't like what some people are saying, and now we lump this person into that group. So again, like I'm saying, these assumptions of, oh, like, okay, you're saying this, so you must be part of the pro this or pro that camp, and I'm going to attack you because I hate those people. But a lot of what we do, it's, as is often the case, we say that when someone says something or does something to you, some of it's related to you, but a lot of it is about them, which is true. But that's also something we see here. People are saying something, and it's more about them than the person. So we should ask ourselves, why am I saying this? What about me makes me want to say this to this person in this way? What am I doing there? What's my objective? Because I think those things are really, really important. I mentioned also other like ways of thinking, of black and white thinking, that I see a lot. People will say things like, for example, if you think the regime is so bad, then you can't complain about the war in any way, which to me doesn't make sense. So I guess the thinking, or the line of reasoning, if you want to call it that, is that if you're saying this regime is so bad, then if someone is coming to help or is attacking them, you can't be mad about that or have any comments about that. And to me, that's very black and white type of thinking, that, okay, you don't like the regime, so anything that is done to Iran or to them is okay, which, a few things. One, no. I think you can't just do anything you want if because you don't think someone is good. That's not true. You can't go to any level. And the other thing, especially with something like this, is that it's not like just the regime is going to be hurt. When Iran gets bombed, the people are being affected and impacted too. So, that adds another layer to it. So even if you're against the regime, it's not just them that's paying the price, it's the people. If anything, with something like the internet lockdown or shutdown, which is not caused by the war itself, but the regime's reaction to the war. So in that way, it is caused by the war, but the regime is the one doing it. I'm sure everyone in the regime, the people in power, they have access to the internet. It's just the people that don't get access to internet, and the ones that are suffering. Maybe they're just empty threats, but if power plants are hit, or when bridges are hit and things like that, of course, it can affect the government, but the people could be impacted even more because, for example, if power plants are hit, I'm sure the people in power, many of them, or many of their buildings or things, will have backup generators or things where they will still be able to have power, or things. I don't know. I'll just assume whatever it is, they'll have more of it than the people have. So I find that interesting, that I've seen that message many times. I even got it sent to me, this idea that if you are against the regime, then how can you be against the war in any way, or against, you don't get to be okay. You can't say you're against the regime and then not like what they're doing. I just don't see those things as true. It's too black and white to think of it just in that kind of a way. Or, other black and white things, that if you support, for example, if you like Trump, then you have to like everything that he does, or you can't criticize any aspect of it, or vice versa. If you don't like Trump, then everything he does has to be wrong or bad. And these ways of thinking they make things more simple and easy, and people like that, but they are not the reality. Thinking in black and white is obviously simpler, it's easier, it's cleaner, it makes us feel better because we can feel, okay, so right or so wrong, or I'm so mad or I'm so happy, because it's just pure black and white. There's no nuance to it. But that's just not the reality. You might have strong feelings about things. You might, see things a certain way or lean a certain way. But if you're really being accurate with yourself and the situation, you'll see that it can't just be black and white. It can't just be one way, or or the other, or all one way or the other. And then related to that kind of a thing, this kind of black and white thinking and being just so sure and so locked in, is people not changing their opinion or views, or updating it with updated information or what's going on. So, again, you could have had a hypothesis, or thoughts that this is good or this is bad, or this is a good approach or that's the bad approach, whatever it might be. And you could put that forward. Again, I think you should do it with the humility that you shouldn't say you're certain about it, because you can't be, but you can still say, this is what I think. I do think that's a good thing, obviously, to have this kind of discourse and for people to share their ideas. But when things change, or when new information comes out, we have to be willing to update what we believe or at least modify. So it doesn't have to be there black and white either. Like now you have to say, I thought this was good, it has to be all bad. But there's more nuance to it. But what I see is that people stay hunkered down in whatever they said. If they were pro-war, even if you say, oh, this might have been not good, they can't even acknowledge that this was not good. They say, no, it was worth it, or it has to have been this way, or or whatever it might be. And I just find that hard to fathom that sometimes, we're talking about the loss of human life, and people can trivialize it just to make sure they can still say, no, I was not wrong, or the US was not wrong, or this was not wrong. And I think that's really, really sad to see. And maybe the other side, let's see what happens. Results can be that maybe things were better than we thought, or things go better than we thought. And you have to look at what's happening and update what we're thinking. But I feel unfortunately people are so locked in, and because when you say something with such certainty, unfortunately, then that makes it harder for you to not double down later on, or to not to be able to change your mind. But you know what? I think I got it wrong, because you say, I know this is true. Anyone that thinks differently is stupid and an idiot and not intelligent or immoral, or all this stuff. And then when new information comes that disconfirms what you already believe, or what you've stated is so definitely true, it makes it hard for you to be like, oh, okay, maybe I got it wrong. And that's why people unfortunately do double down further. So this certainty epidemic that we have in general, you see it very strongly playing out with what's happening in Iran and people's reactions to it, that they think that they have to be so certain in how they say their opinion. And because they're so certain, they have to so much attack people that disagree with them, because they're so wrong and so stupid and so immoral, or might even be traitors, or against the good of the people. And then when new information comes, we can't update our opinions because we've so boldly stated that we are for sure right, that further impedes us understanding and coming together and getting to a better place. So it's unfortunate, a lot of what I am seeing, and I think sometimes people say social media or the internet brings out the worst in people, but unfortunately it's such a big way of how people communicate, and I think it does bring out a lot of bad things, but it's just creating a lot of bad patterns in how we talk. So whether it's online or offline, I hope people will be more mindful of these things, and not you know to have the humility to know that they can't know exactly what's going to happen or what's the right thing, to have the humility when they communicate, and the respect of even if you disagree with someone, you can respectfully disagree and have conversations about what is going on, and to be open to, if we make less hard and fast judgments and don't proclaim things so certain with so much certainty, then it will be easier for us to update, or to take in new information, and to update how we see things and our perspective. So I hope we can all do better in how we communicate about what's going on in Iran. And of course, most importantly, is the people of Iran, who they don't have the luxury for this to be their problems or their issues. And so that could remind us to do our best for them, because they deserve the best from us. Okay, let's go to our last commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In this last segment, wanted to switch gears and talk about a topic that I've covered a lot in the last year or so. That's just some experiences of fatherhood, something that I've had the incredible honor of having for almost 11 months now. Yeah, I can't believe it when I even say that, almost 11 months. My son Keon will turn 1 just over a month. That has been the greatest blessing experience of my life, without a doubt. And what I wanted to share today is, being a parent tests you and pushes you and teaches you in so many ways constantly. And I've talked before about this beautiful but painful feeling of seeing your children grow. That, of course, you want them to grow and get stronger and reach different milestones, and you're lucky to have that experience for sure. You want that so much, but at the same time, there is a pain that comes with them growing and losing each version of them, or each period of their life, very newborn and the smaller baby phases, and then the different stages that they go through. There's a pain that many parents experience, and I feel that too. You feel both things, and I'm so grateful actually for who he is now, and he's so fun, and now you can engage in ways that obviously you couldn't when he was younger. So it's the best. I have such a great time with him, and I love that he's getting older, and I can have even more of a relationship with him, that it's back and forth, and he can even laugh, or almost seems like he makes jokes, or I think he's funny, or just play in different ways, and it's amazing. I really am so grateful for that. But my wife and I were going through some old pictures and videos. My phone is just like hundreds, thousands of pictures and videos of him over the days and months, and going back to some earlier stages, and just seeing how he's always so cute, but it was just cute in a different way because he's smaller. And I saw this one video, and I remember I had this strong desire, and it's like realizing, wow, what would I give to be able to hold him again, and that stage, just experience it again for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just to have that. And it made me kind of sad. I was tearing up, realizing, oh, that's it. You don't get that again. That is gone, and that's even what you have parented for, worked for, is for it to be gone, for him to grow, but there's still pain, a sadness of what is lost there. And so I was having this feeling, getting teary-eyed, seeing this video, and imagining having that experience again, and realizing that it's gone forever. And the powerful lesson that was there after my eyes dried up a bit, was remembering and realizing that this is such a strong reminder to enjoy every moment now, every moment I get with him, because it is all fleeting. And that's the lesson that it's obviously so prominent here, but it's about life in general, that whatever we're experiencing, whatever's happening in our life, that moment is there, and then it's gone. And there's nothing you do. You can't cling to the moment or make it stay, or get stuck forever. All we could do is try our best to experience the moments as fully as possible, be as present and as mindful as can possibly be, to experience it as fully and strongly as is possible. And this is why mindfulness, which has been this buzzword now for a couple of decades in the Western world, but has been much more of a concept in Eastern traditions even before that. But mindfulness is so important, and a lot of these things that become almost become cliche. It's so everyone's just talking about mindfulness or meditation. It's like the only thing, and people will talk about it, and then they talk about it so much that it almost can lose its value, or we forget its significance. But really, mindfulness, yes, it can make us have less anxiety, do a lot of things, but one of the biggest things is that it also makes us live more fully. Unfortunately, often we are worrying about something in the future, or we are thinking about the past, reflecting on something when we are experiencing the present moment, or because of that, we don't experience the present moment as much. And even with my son, and I think most parents can attest to, there's always some things you're worried about, some very smaller scale, maybe day-to-day things that his nap and food and things and whatever it is, that you're dealing with. And then sometimes bigger things will pop into your mind about bigger picture things. And so often I found that when I'm looking at him or I'm interacting with him, those worries will come in, or I feel like I'm checking on something, his skin or something, is that an issue or something I have to pay attention to, or noticing that first when I see him. And I don't want that to be the case. Of course, we have to pay attention to so many things. We can't be oblivious. We're his parents, and we have to take care of him and make sure that we do that. But it definitely doesn't need to be at the expense of not actually experiencing him and enjoying him every moment, every day that we can, because that's the most important thing. That's what it's all about. And so this realization, and it's come up many times, just trying to really enjoy the moments and feel them fully. There's this beautiful song by Jim Croce called time in a bottle, where I think he wrote it for his son, actually. And he says, if I could save time in a bottle, the first thing I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. And when I heard that many years ago, I thought the song was beautiful and sweet. And then when you have a child, it hits you in another way, where you have these moments. I've had so many of them where I was like, I wish this could be forever. This moment of just, sometimes I'm holding him and he's asleep, or or having this really sweet or beautiful moment, or he's laughing, or whatever it is, and it's just this feeling of, I wish this moment could be forever, which is an understandable feeling, not a possible one, but a very understandable thing to want. And so again, it's this reminder, well, that I have to enjoy those moments, all the moments, as fully as I can, and be as present as possible. So going back to what I was saying about mindfulness, that it can also become cliche and overused to the point where it loses its meaning. But really, it's about, we get to be human and have this life once. We just live one life. But how much we experience it is a big variable. We can be so worried about the future and stuck in the past, or even doing multiple things at the same time. We talk about worrying about the future and being stuck in the past, for sure. Those two kind of ways that we can go back and forward and not be in the moment, for sure. But also, we do multiple things. We're checking our phone while we're playing with our kid, or we're focusing on something else, or whatever it is, rather than doing focusing on our kid. That's something we do a lot now. I feel like people, even they'll say they watch a movie and they're also on their phone at the same time, rather than just like really enjoying the movie, or experiencing the movie. And so I think that's so important. That's something that my son, amongst the many lessons that he continues teaching me, and to get to be his dad continues to teach me, has been coming up, is realizing how much I can do that sometimes, not be as present, and not be focused on just him and what's in front of me. And I think that's one of the best things we can remember about life, is that, yes, what we do and what happens is so important, but how we experience them is so important. It could really make all the difference. You can, go to the most beautiful place in the world, but if you're really not paying attention to it and really looking around, you don't really, were you really there? You weren't fully there. And that's something even a child does teach you too. We go outside and you'll see a plane. And he's just like so amazed, and he can hear the plane and see the plane. And I'm watching with him, and I kind of marvel at his wonder and his awe, but I also get to remember it again. Like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so seeing things through your child's eyes is also very beautiful. The freshness of it, the newness, and not taking it for granted, and the excitement. That's something I also admire about Kian, and try to embody as well. And also just having fun. And, as he's getting older, I was saying we can have more fun and be silly and dance and play and do all sorts of things. And so there's all these ways that, we have 24 hours in a day. We have, all the days that we will experience and have, but how much we experience them is really up to us. And we can make, a lot of difference in how much we experience things. And so that's easier said than done, because life is happening at us and we have things to do and take care of. But I think it is something to try to focus on, and to be aware of how much we actually miss out. Even already, I can think of the times I've probably missed out with him because I was worried about something that maybe I didn't need to worry about, or I could not think about, or I was trying to do something else while I was playing with him, or could be with him. And that was something that I could have done better at. And there are so many moments with the child, especially when he was younger, and would just sometimes fall asleep, and you'd be holding him, and maybe I wouldn't have anything with me, my phone, I wasn't watching anything. And it was actually so beautiful that I would just be with him for, an hour, even sometimes. And there was no other distraction other than just watching him and experiencing him. And I think it's something that we've lost more and more. Another cliche thing is to say phones, but really just with phones and screens and the way we experience life, there's almost a sense, like I would have it too, like, oh, if I don't have my phone, it's like a waste of time. Like I'm just sitting there, realizing that it's actually the opposite, that I could have been sitting there enjoying him fully. If I had my phone, it would make it more of a waste of time. But I think we've gotten so hooked to this feeling that we're being productive on our phone, or we're doing something, even though really we're becoming more passive a lot of times when we're on our phones and checking out. It's really backwards, that we think we're doing something, but really we're doing less of something, which is experiencing what is right there in front of us. So it's this very, it could be a sad and painful thing. And I've heard a lot of parents talk about this beautiful experience of seeing your children grow, but that bittersweet feeling that can also come with it, that makes you sad of the phases you'll no longer get back, and the ways they look that you'll no longer get back, or something they did for a short time they no longer do. And he has so many of those, and so it's heartbreaking in its own way. It's very beautiful, but it's something that reminds us of the beauty of life, and again, this sense that make sure you experience what you can when you can, because it's gone. So as I went to sleep that night, I tried to remember, okay, the next day, try your best to experience them as much as you can today, because there will be definitely a day that you'll miss this stage and this phase. So experience it as much as you can. That's all we can do. We can't, we can take pictures and videos, and that can be nice as reminders and to take us back in its own way. But as far as experiencing it again, you never can. So all we can do is experience it as fully as we can, when we're there, when we're present, and to stay present in those moments. All right, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. A big thank you to Farid in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee, Free Iran.